Hey everybody, I'm Jason Bent and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be covering a topic that has been requested of me multiple times, and that is how you use a domino to place a center divider in your project, whether it's a cabinet project, whether it's a piece of furniture. There seems to be a lot of confusion around this process, and it's really a very, very simple process that hopefully after watching this video, you'll stop overthinking it and you'll see just how easy it can be. Okay, so here are my two pieces of scrap, and let's just put that right there. So for this demonstration, let's pretend that we want to put a vertical panel perfectly centered on this bottom panel. And so there's a couple of things that I want to do first. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a measurement on just how long my panel is. And here it is 521 millimeters. So I've got 521 millimeters. The next thing I want to know is what the thickness of my panel will be. So if I wanted to have this perfectly centered, I would need to know the thickness of this. The thickness of this panel is 17 millimeters. 17 millimeters. So that gives me a total of 504 millimeters. So that is how much I have to work with from the edge of here to the edge of here. So now I want to divide that by 2. And that's going to give me 252 millimeters. So I know that the spacing to the left and right of that panel is going to be 252 millimeters. I only need to know that measurement one time. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm going to make a mark at 252. Then I'm going to take a straight edge and I'm going to scribe that line all the way down. That's now my reference line. Now, what I can do with that is I can now line my board that's going to be the panel that's going to be vertical right on that line. And now all I'm doing is just making sure that it's nice and flush to the ends. I know it's right on that line. It's flush everywhere. So now I'm going to go ahead and clamp this in place. All right, so that's clamped in place. It's flush everywhere around, and the edge is right on that line. Now here is the key, and this is where I think people get confused. When you're using the domino, you want to make sure that you're referencing off the same piece. And in this scenario, the reference for the vertical plunges is this edge, and the reference for the plunges into the divider is this edge. And let me give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. So when I plunge in to the bottom of these panels, it's resting flat on this bottom panel. And then I'm going to make my plunge. When I make my vertical plunge, this bottom plate is resting against here. And then I'm going to make my vertical plunge. So in a scenario like this, this plate here does not matter. It does not need to be down. It can just be up the entire time because you don't need it. That's not the reference. The reference is the bottom of this. Now in this instance, we're using 17 millimeter thick plywood. I'm going to use 5 millimeter dominoes, and I'm going to set my plunge depth to 15 because it is a 30 by 5 domino. So I'm going to go 15 millimeters in here. I'm going to go 15 millimeters into here. You could also use a 4 millimeter domino if you don't want to get so close to the edge. You could also go 20 into here and 12 into here and use the same domino. And then the other thing, for this example, I'm going to be using these as my reference. So I'm going to do one on each end, and I'm going to use those as my reference for both the vertical and horizontal plunges. So let's go ahead and get this hooked up real quick, and we'll go ahead and make the cuts. Okay, I've got everything hooked up. I'm on the tight setting. I'm going to first plunge into the vertical portion, and then I'm going to do my horizontal plunges. Again, I'm using the stops as a reference. And now for my vertical plunges, using the stops as a reference and the plate against the divider, slide it over, ready to go. Okay, so I've cut my mortises. I can go ahead and unclamp my board. And you don't have to use clamps on an MFT like this, obviously. You could use double-sided tape. You could use a regular clamp and have it sitting off the edge of the table a little bit. There's a million different ways that you could do it. Go ahead and insert my domino here. Insert my other domino. I'm going to move that away. Tap these in. Then I can take my panel, slide it down, and there you go. Perfectly centered on the board, right on that line that I marked. Everything is nice and flush because we used the precision of the machine instead of making marks. And we have a center divider perfectly centered on a panel. It's really, really simple. Again, I think the thing that people get the most confused about is what to use as a reference here. Just remember that whatever you're referencing off the machine, you want to do the same thing to the board. So if I'm using the plate, the base plate, and it's sitting flat on this, it also needs to be sitting flat up against this when I'm doing my vertical plunges. So inevitably, I know I'll be asked from this video, well, what if I didn't want it to be centered? What if I wanted, let's say, the right-hand side and the left-hand side to only be about a 200 millimeter opening or something like that? Well, what you would do is you would then measure off of each end and create that line. So if I knew that this opening right here needed to be, we'll say 200 millimeters, and I wanted a panel divider like this, and then on this side I needed it to be 200 meters and I wanted a panel divider like this, all you would do is measure 200, 200, I'd mark my line all the way up and down. If you really want to, it's just a really nice reference to have that. I've got my two reference lines, and now I can go ahead and make my cuts. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that if I have a bottom, I'm most likely going to have a top. So you obviously would want to extend this onto your other piece. And however you do it on this one is exactly the same way you have to do it on the other one. What I mean by that is if I know that I need this section right here to be 200 millimeters, that means my board has to go up like this. Same thing on this side. So what I wouldn't want to do is I wouldn't want to place this board here and reference off of this area, because now it's going to turn up like this, and now I no longer have 200 millimeters on this side, if that makes sense. So the space that you need to be a certain size, that should be the space that you're putting your divider on, so when it folds up, it is now keeping it that size. So I would just go through the exact same steps. I'd line it up on this line, clamp everything down, make my cut. This would go up like this. On this one right here, clamp this down, get everything nice and flush, make my plunges, lift this up like this, and that gives me a 200 millimeter opening here, gives me a 200 millimeter opening here, leaving whatever is left in the center. So that was a quick demonstration of how I go about laying out my panels in the event that I want to have some sort of vertical divider and using the domino. The domino is super easy to use, especially when you're just referencing the end or doing a butt joint or something like that, because it's very easy to identify what the references are, and then you move into wanting to do a center divider, and you have to lay a little bit of stuff out. But the process is very simple, and I hope that this video clarified that for you. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you want to find out more about me and what I do, head over to benswoodworking.com. If you have any questions or something that I did not cover in this video, leave it down in the comments section below. And until next time, everybody, get out in the shop, try something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.